If anybody has an understanding of of exactly how the film is going to finish in pacing, if anybody does, it would be Michael. Michael would orchestrate it in a very specific way and say, well, this section's going to be this and this, and even probably to the timings. He's extremely meticulous in making a film.
You manipulated me into this.
That's bullshit, Jeff.
You greased the rails.
I greased the rails for a guy who wanted to say yes. I helped him to say yes, that's all. You're not a robot, Jeff. Right? You got a mind of your own, don't you?
Up to you, Jeffrey. That's the power you have, Jeffrey. Vital insider information the American public need to know. Lowell Bergman, the hotshot who never met a source he couldn't turn around.
I fought for you, and I still fight for you.
You fought for me? You manipulated me into where I am now. Staring at the Brown and Williamson building. It's all dark except the 10th floor. That's the legal department. That's where they fuck with my life.
His vision is the movie, you know? Not that he's not collaborative, but Michael knows. Michael spends a tremendous amount of time before his movies creating how this movie's gonna be, you know? And I've never experienced that kind of detail work from any other director, ever.
I've heard him say it before, and that is, I don't care what goes on in the world around outside of this frame. As long as I get it in the can, I can make the movie. And he is so, again, singularly focused on what's happening between the people on the screen.
For an actor, he was the perfect director to work with because I feel that he loves these characters that he created, and he's only going to put people in there that he knows that he'd be happy with. And when you know somebody truly loves their characters, and you feel that you are the right person for that, you don't worry, and you don't think, okay, what is he going to do here, and is he going to misread what's happening here? You surrender your control in a sense.
Michael's intense attention to detail is extraordinary, and I think that's what movies are all about. A director who pays such attention to detail, I respect more than anything. He's one of them.
To date, director Michael Mann has made 9 feature-length films, 2 of them for television. Yet, as short as this list may appear, they include such critical and box office successes as Manhunter, The Last of the Mohegans, Heat, The Insider, and the 2001 release of Ali. He is also the man behind such hit television series as Miami Vice and Crime Story. Born in Chicago and educated at the University of Wisconsin, Mann eventually went to England, where he began his studies at the London Film School before returning to the United States to begin his distinguished career.
Chicago was an interesting city to grow up in. It was very much, my childhood was very much in an inner city environment and kind of a working class, lower middle class neighborhood called Humboldt Park around North Avenue in Kedzie. And there was progressive jazz on the south side, the Checkerboard Lounge, 64th and Cottage Grove. That was kind of the quintessence of what was cool. I'm speaking of the late 50s modern jazz quartet, Miles, Thelonious Monk. And then on the west side, there was Curly's Place, which was Muddy Waters' neighborhood bar, and he played it 4 nights a week when he had the Optimum band with Otis Spann on the piano. But that was Chicago. I have a lot of affection for it. So it's not by accident that the first feature film I made, Thief, was very much set in Chicago that I started to find visually very exciting. And I got seriously interested in cinema as a surprise to myself at a much later age, and I was about 20, 21. And I was at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, which again, I was very fortunate to be there. It was kind of a golden period of time at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was one of the 3 or 4 radical campuses in the United States, with Berkeley, Madison and Columbia. And I took a course in film history quite by accident, and a lot of things I was interested in suddenly focused and took me over. It's one of the few times in my life that I just, the skies parted and a large hand came down and said, "You will do this." And that was it just occurred to me coming down the hill one night. I remember it vividly at about 10 o'clock at night. It was about 10 below zero, crystal clear night in the winter in Madison, Wisconsin. And I just come from seeing either Pabst Joyless Street or it was probably a Murnau film. I don't remember the film. And so it occurred to me, this is what you have to do. This is what you want to do. This is what you've been looking for. You know, you want to make films. You want to be a film director. And then it changed my life. And I've always considered myself a very fortunate man to have found that thing to do for which I have an unabating passion. The most important thing for me personally, and that affected the way I make film, which is relative. It's only of significance to me. It's not a prescription for anybody else. Is an interdisciplinary approach, meaning that I was drawn to use all of the tools at my command. So my ambition for myself was from 1967 was towards 66, 67 was I was drawn towards a highly cinematic form of film that used formal elements in their fullest to be expressive, and one could predict from that approach that the first attempts would be really awkward because if you're trying to wield the totality of it, it would be highly predictable that it would be a disaster. And so I made some student films, which I'll never allow anyone to see. That are really genuinely terrible. And that is the other function of film school, is to make really terrible. It's terribly important to make terrible films, to just extend oneself into, whole orders of magnitudes of ridiculousness. You can't do it when you get out of film school. So to really reach and stretch and be very experimental is a great value.
After returning to the United States in the early 70s, Mann began to develop his skills as a writer and wrote some early episodes of Starsky and Hutch. Soon afterward, he began working on Police Story and wrote the pilot creating the television series Vegas. This led him to his first feature-length project, The Jericho Mile, originally made for television but later released theatrically outside the United States. The film won an Emmy and a Directors Guild Award for Mann as Best Director. Mann explains the pressure of directing his first film this way.
The anxiety, I don't think I had a lot of anxiety. Of course, I had some anxiety about the first day of shooting, but the first day of shooting isn't really the first day of shooting. It's the weeks and weeks prior to that, the 6 weeks prior to that, when you anticipate it and you're casting. There's so much anxiety in pre-production and making sure that everything's going to be there, but that by the time you hit that first day of principal photography, I'm just concentrating on getting everything that I wanted to do that day done really well. So if there is a day of high anxiety, it's probably 3 weeks beforehand when the warden told me if there's a gang war or a race war, we'll throw you out and you won't be able to come back.
In 1981, Mann released Thief, starring James Caan, Tuesday Weld, Willie Nelson, and James Belushi. James Caan was at his very best as a tough, wisecracking professional thief trapped between Chicago organized crime families and corrupt police.
What the hell do you think that I do?
You sell little fucking cars, that's what you do.
I wear $150 slacks. I wear silk shirts. I wear $800 suits. I wear a gold watch. I wear a perfect D, flawless, 3-carat ring. I change cars like other guys change their fucking shoes. I'm a thief. I've been in prison, all right?
95% of his work is done before he hits the set. He's researched everything, every character, every detail in the movie. There was a scene where I'm on top of the building in Los Angeles when we're scoping out the job, And it was just one scene, and he wanted a Hawaiian shirt on me, and he had a specific idea about a Hawaiian shirt. Drove this poor girl crazy for, 8 weeks, and kept saying no to shirts, no, 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 and made her make a shirt for me for that one scene. I mean, he wanted a specific Hawaiian shirt with the white flower, the black, and the red. So he's very specific with everything around him, including the actors.
The real reason to do Thief was I was struck with the notion of something I'd picked up in Folsom Prison, of somebody coming out of prison, autodidactic, self-taught. They had been off the street from when they were, say, 17 to their early 30s or mid-30s. They had none of the normal development that we have. And I was struck by the notion of telling a story about a wild child, that subgenre of wild child movies, when someone is removed from society and now they re-enter it. The collision of that character with society causes all kinds of wonderful conflicts and wonderful revelations. So in a way, Frank, played by Jimmy Caan, is out of society. He doesn't know how to work a jukebox. He doesn't know how to ask a woman out on a date. He doesn't know how to work a push-button payphone. In the work I had done on Jericho Mile, I met people like that, and they all come out with a plan of how they're going to do it, how they're going to make it on the street.
He told us, never speak in contractions. Never say, I can't, or I won't be there. It's always, I cannot be there. I will not be. You will meet me at, because in this guy's life, these thieves, everything had to be clear and specific so nothing got messed up. I mean, little things like that.
I stole $40.
$40?
Yeah. Started with a 2-year bit, parole in 6 months. And right away, I got into this problem with these 2 guys. They tried to turn me out. So I picked up 9 more on a manslaughter beef, some other things. I was 20 when I went in, 31 when I come out.
I think the part of Thief I like the best is the story at the end, in which he is vulnerable to exploitation as a wage slave working for Leo, who in a very brutal fashion kills Jim Belushi.
The way it was written was that this character gets shot in the belly and falls in a car. And I'm like, what kind of death scene is that, Michael? And he goes, well, you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I want to do it. So he introduced me to the stunt coordinator, Walter Scott. I said, this is Jim Belushi, this is Walter Scott. He's playing a part of Barry. He'd like to do his own stunt. And then he walked and left. And left me with this big stunt man who goes, actor wanted to do something. Okay, what's it like? How would you react if you got shot in the stomach? I'll go, he goes, no. And the long story short is I worked with Carl, Walter, worked with him, until we had a run, a jump, a hit on the tire, a body turn, 2 shots. I got yanked back, hit the van, and then go down. It was an acrobatic feat.
It's all fact-based, everything in Thief. And a lot of the people in the film were, some are dead now, were and are professional thieves, and a lot of them are detectives in the Criminal Intelligence Unit, which is the elite task force. I crossed them. I would have thieves playing cops and have cops playing thieves, because they all grew up in the same neighborhood, the same inner city near Northwest Side neighborhood called the Patch in Chicago, and they were more at ease playing their opposite numbers. That's where Dennis Farina came from. Dennis was he was a cop in Chicago, he was a detective.
A couple hours after I got home, the phone rang. And it was a girl that worked in Michael's office. They had set up offices, in Chicago and stuff. And she said, Michael would like you to come down and for fitting of wardrobe and makeup and stuff. He wants to cast you in this movie. So I thought it was these guys goofing around because we were out all night and, they knew I would be tired and they're just playing around. So I says, okay, all right, I'll come down. So now I figure I get there and they'll be sitting there, they'll have a laugh, ha ha ha, and we'll have a cup of coffee and we'll eat breakfast, and that'll be the end of that. But sure enough, I get down there and this girl is waiting for me, and she takes me into the hair and makeup and wardrobe and stuff like that. And Michael walks in and he says, I want you to do the part of this character, Carl.
I'm going to tell you how relentless Michael is about getting what he wants. I was to get married on a Saturday, May 17th, and he wanted me to shoot a scene on May 17th. And I said, Michael, you want me to call my wife and cancel the wedding? You call her. What's the number? Hi, Sandy, Michael Mann, how are you? Good, good. Well, congratulations. Listen, I'm going to need Jim on Saturday for this shot. And you know what? We got married a week later.
In 1983, Mann released The Keep, the story of corruption and love set in the foreground of World War II. Scott Glenn starred as a mysterious traveler who returns to the Carpathian Alps to prevent an evil force from being released. The film's offbeat story appealed mostly to connoisseurs of strange cinema and did not do well with either critics or audiences.
This is a very shy boy, Will. What were the yards like?
Big backyards, fences, hedges. Why?
Because, my dear Will, if this pilgrim imagines he has a relationship with the moon, he might go outside to look at it.
Mann came back stronger than ever with the 1986 release of Manhunter, starring William Peterson. Based on the Thomas Harris novel Red Dragon, Manhunter was the film that introduced audiences to the character of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, later to become immortalized in the film Silence of the Lambs.
I want your opinion.
I don't have one right now.
Well, when you have one, I'd like to hear it.
Can I keep this?
I haven't decided yet.
I'll study them. When you get more files, I'd like to see them too. You can call me when I have to call my lawyer. They bring me a telephone. Would you like to leave me your home phone number?
No.
Do you know how you caught me, Will?
Goodbye, Dr. Lecter. You can leave messages for me at the number on
You
the
know
file.
how you caught me? The reason you caught me, Will, is you're just alike. You want the scent? Smell yourself.
I don't think there is anybody who is more careful about his work than Michael. I mean, I used to think sometimes it was ridiculous that we were on the 25th take of something. I wasn't sure what I could do any differently to make it this way or that way. I, at the time, being a young film novice actor, you know, thought, is this crazy? I mean, why are we doing all these takes and all these things? And then, of course, you watch the work and you see it on the screen and you go, oh, that's why.
After reading the novel Red Dragon, Mann's interest was further piqued when he became familiar with the story of killer Dennis Wallace and Wallace's attempt to have the state perform a medical procedure on him, which had been denied.
I become interested in him way early on because he sued the state of California to get a stereotactic procedure. This is where they drill a couple of holes in your skull and go in with a couple of anodes and burn out parts of the amygdala under the idea that it cures schizophrenia. And when you talk to these very frightening neurosurgeons, they would also tell you it also cures the common cold. So Dennis was suing the state because he wanted this procedure, and they were denying it to him. I wanted to find a way to do Dennis's story and could not. Harris, in Red Dragon, invented the character of Graham, who had to empathize with the fantasy of a serial killer to discover the serial killer's motive. And it was an ingenious invention, and that became how to do it. The most poignant moment of that motion picture for me is actually the relationship between Dollarhide and Reba, the blind girl. It's a wounded human being, a severely wounded human being. He has an unusual insight into her and realizes that she would be substituting sensory intake through touch and smell and hearing because she's sightless. And and she would live in a very tactile, very sensual world that was tactile. And so he brings her to a friend who sedated a tiger, who's a veterinarian at the zoo. And he arranges for her to touch a tiger.
She's feeling his fur, and they're going to give it an operation on the tooth or something. And so it's a gorgeous, gorgeous scene. And Joni's just, brilliant. And it's shot brilliantly. I mean, that's a moment in a Michael Mann movie. The music is so enriching, The scene that I'll always remember is us working on the scene where Will Graham first walks into a family that's been murdered's house. I think it's in Atlanta. And he goes through the door and he reenacts how the killer must have felt walking up the stairs and going by the children's room and going into the parents' room and watching the people as they slept. And I remember it was a very evocative evening with Michael when we went through that scene, and we walked through the house in the dark and tried to relive the feelings of this killer and what he must have thought and felt that night as he did it.
Fans of Michael Mann's films are familiar with his intimate signature visual style. He often chooses to operate his own camera in an effort to capture within each frame exactly what he imagines the visual style of the scene to be.
It has more to do with the nuance of framing. Sometimes I am most close to two actors in a dialogue scene if I'm over one actor's shoulder with that camera. It becomes very collaborative when Daniel Day-Lewis and Madeleine Stowe did some of their most intimate scenes together, particularly the one in the forest when they're in the burial site and they're under the threat of the Abenaki, who are chasing them. And he explains things to her. There was something about operating the camera with the two of them right there that made the scene, for me, as a director, be so much more intimate.
The Last of the Mohegans was an epic adventure and passionate romance that unfolded against the panorama of a frontier wilderness ravaged by war. The film starred Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeleine Stowe, Russell Means, and Wes Studi. Based on the book by James Fenimore Cooper, The Last of the Mohegans proved to be an enormous hit with both critics and moviegoers.
He comes to the set and he's ready to do what it is that he has pictured in his mind. And as a matter of fact, he may be even talking to you as an actor, and all of a sudden you can see the wheels beginning to work in his mind. It could be that another idea just struck him, perhaps about what he's talking about, or perhaps about another shot. But he's thinking, he's living that particular picture at that time.
This man said he was going to do something, and he did it. And I'm very unaccustomed, in a sense, to that. He's extraordinary. He says, this is what I want to do. He makes it clear, and there it is.
Why one gets arrested by an idea to do a film, and then what the film's about, and usually one doesn't have to do with the other. I had an image from early childhood of something very scary about the Indians and Last of the Mohegans. And I also had an image of running and movement. And it occurred to me in 1991, it's been with you your whole life. And it just never occurred to me, why not remake Last of the Mohegans? And I looked at the film, and it was not terribly good. Read the screenplay, it was excellent. Read the book, the novel is horrible. It is just a terrible piece of writing by James Fenimore Cooper. And it is also politically evil because it is highly revisionist. But the central reason to do Last of the Mohegans, when I came to do the film, what was the film about, had to do with the passion to preserve life in combat, in disaster, in war, because the wars fought in the Americas were waged against the people, and they weren't in Europe, but they were in the Americas. And it is the passion of preserving life. By design, I wanted the film to be a very passionate film.
I can't explain it other than to say that you felt that every movement that you did, every gesture, was taken in by him, if not consciously, then more unconsciously. And I think that they were critical. I mean, he spent a lot of time talking about the characters' two varied backgrounds and how the fascination with one another being so different was so important to him.
I mean, I have made some casting mistakes. You know, this is not one of them. Daniel and Madeline were spectacular. I mean, Daniel and I talked to a lot of women, and Madeline walked in a room. I think within 10 minutes, Daniel and I looked at each other, our eyes connected, and we knew she was it.
There's a scene where Hawkeye and Cora finally come together physically. And I remember the first time going to shoot it, and it felt so wrong I couldn't even say. I mean, it was just awful. And I did the very girl thing of sort of taking it upon myself. And I went to the director and I said, you know, Michael, this just didn't feel right, and I know that I wasn't up to snuff, and these are the reason why, and I was disconnected, and, you know, I blame myself. And I told Daniel the same thing. And Michael said, okay, we'll go back and shoot it again. And the second time came to shooting it, and then Michael froze. It was really peculiar, and he fixated on a strand of hair that was coming down my neck and said, the hair's not right, I'm not going to shoot it. And we came back to it a third time. We never even rolled cameras at that the second time. And the third time we came back to it, and it was the scene where it's kind of a love scene. And I think it's really beautifully shot. And he shot it completely without calculation. He didn't know what he was going to do. And he went, I mean, it shows the depth of his feeling for something. And you see sort of the way the camera glides down arms and sides of faces and backs of necks. And it's a very un-Hollywood love scene.
They are where great actors go. They are totally in the moment. They are in 1757. Death is tomorrow morning. And that's the, that explains that moment. They're completely and totally in the same. It's not so much that Mohicans is a love story in a war zone. That's kind of an unfortunate idea. It really isn't. It's what happens in war zones when you are facing the demise of your people, you're facing the demise of your brother, your son, your sister, your father is going to die. It's the first war waged against civilians.
These characters were in wartime, in the middle of battles. There was a sense of a crisis always. So I think that you inherently are going to have the sense that things are critical and the stakes are very great. And that always brings pace around to what it should be. You're not going to be, laying back and saying, okay, what's the next thing going to be? And is this filler? Is this not? I mean, everything was there for a reason. And Michael very often would take so much time in setting his shots. I mean, if he moved the camera over just a few inches, that was a crucial thing. It told a different story, and he knew that. And he had the stamina to withstand a lot of pressures that most directors, fall prey to, which is, time, money. I've got, 250 extras out here. What am I going to do? And he never lost track of his path.
The Last of the Mohegans is as much about the plight of the Indians of that period in history as it is about the Hawkeye and Cora Munro characters. A key plot motivator in the film comes in the form of an Indian named Magua, played with chilling realism by actor Wes Studi.
Magua lost his children and his wife and was made a Mohawk slave and tried to politically, because he's sophisticated and a natural leader, find a way to bring his people into a political reality that could survive. It's a struggle to survive. It's all about a struggle to survive. And that's what makes Magua comprehensible. And Magua hearkens, he explains that to General Montcalm in the scene between the two of them. And Magua emotionally is at that point of the earlier Magua that we've never seen before, only at one moment in the film. It's after he's killed Uncas and thrown him off the cliff. And Alice Munro is at the edge of the cliff, and she's looking at him, and he sees something in her eyes, and he becomes a different person for a moment.
the thought process that we decided to put into it was that, you know, he looks at the girl, sees her for what she is, a very young girl, you know, with not much experience, and, you know, really still needs parental care.
And we think he's going to kill her, and instead he puts down his hand, and he gestures for her to come in from the edge. And it's a very human act, it's a charitable act, but he's gesturing for her to come in with his hand, and on his hand is the blood of Uncas.
Just for that split second, you know, Magua feels like, I can't just do away with this one here. I know she's a product of the enemy, but on the other hand, it's just a child, and she's not really involved in this life yet. You know, so he sort of puts his hand out to her, see if she has the good sense to come rather than jump. Well, turns out she doesn't, but then, you know, he gave it his best, and then it's back to business as usual.
These stories are ripped out of life. They're ripped out of true history. And I think that's what made the basis of what Last of the Mohicans is drawn from so emotionally, you know, profound and moving to me. I mean, what I found mostly profound and moving was the real events that James Fenimore Cooper drew from, I believe, revised history rather poorly.
There was a scene that takes place under a waterfall in a cave. And it was really cold, and it was the last couple of days of shooting, and Michael had to get the film in, and he was shooting a 26-hour day, something like that. And Michael came up to us. I remember this, so funny. It was just peculiar. And when everything seemed very strange, he came over, and he had nothing to say to us. He just wanted to hang for a minute. And he put his arm around Daniel and his arm around me, and leaned his forehead. I think he was weary, really weary, and hung his forehead forward. And we were all sitting there with our heads together. Nothing was said. I don't even know what the moment was, you know. But it was so atypical of Michael, who was always behind the camera and very, you know, focused and direct. And it was sweet. And I knew that he truly loved doing what he was doing, and he knew the moment was about to leave.
Just stay alive. If they don't kill you, they'll take you north up to Huron land. Submit, you hear? Be strong. You survive. Stay alive, no matter what occurs. I will find you. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far. I will find you.
It was the film that brought Al Pacino and Robert De Niro together on the screen for the first time. Heat, Mann's 1995 hit, also starred Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Wes Studi, Amy Brenneman, Ashley Judd, Diane Venora, and John Voight, in a tale of a brilliant Los Angeles cop following the trail of a deadly master thief.
It's really hard to say what gets me going on a specific project. It's usually what I find is that what hooks me into it is usually not what it's about or why one ultimately, you know, makes it. In the case of Heat, I wrote it in the late 70s. I pirated about 60% of it, and did it as a movie of the week in 1989, called L.A. Takedown, and then went back to the full form of the screenplay in 95. And I wondered whether or not it was going to be. I can't stand doing something twice, but then I felt that I didn't feel that way about this at all. It was almost as if the movie of the week version of it, shot in 19 days, was the equivalent of a dress rehearsal or a short form of it, a sketch. You see what's right, you see what's wrong, like you do a play. I very much moved through Heat in a way a cultural anthropologist would move into society to know it. We spent every Friday and Saturday night out with a plainclothes commander in the LAPD, rolling out crime scenes from 9 at night to 3 in the morning for months to really get what LA was. And I thought I knew LA from having lived here for about 20 years by the time I did Heat, but I didn't know anything about LA until I rolled on all these crime scenes and met people and the most bizarre, unimaginable events that we would happen upon, and the most tragic homicide scenes. There was something quite special about that grouping of Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Jon Voight, and Robert De Niro. They just felt like they were a group, and I wanted them to feel that way.
This part really called for me to change my physicality enormously. According to myself, I wanted to do something totally different. And we did some very strong things. I said, do this thing with the makeup. I said, I want to see real damage, skin damage, you know. And I told him the whole story. I said, let's see if we can affect that. And then he broke his nose, so let's see if that does it. And I wanted teeth that looked like false teeth. So put it like a bridge that was loose every once in a while. Stuff, all these details. It's exactly what Michael loves.
$1.6 million. 40 cents on the dollar, 640,000 to you. 150 front money. Get you the rest 2-3 days. No who own these?
Malibu Equity and Investments.
Roger Van Zant. Owns banks in the Caymans. Runs investment portfolios for offshore drug money. Stuff like that.
So?
So, he ripped off his bearer bonds.
Yeah, he's got insurance.
That's the point. He collects 100% from the insurance. He's a player. Maybe he buys his bonds back from us for 60% of their value. Make 40% on top of the 100%. Sell it back to him instead of going to the street. That's an extra 320,000 to you.
Try it out.
One of the top executives at Warner Brothers, when they first saw the film, poor Jon Voight, wow, he aged, and you know, and I was astounded. I said, it's all makeup. I mean, it was just all makeup and acting and performance and things and his teeth, but it wasn't the mechanical appliances of it. It was the totality of Voight as a great actor.
He let me go in certain scenes. Scenes that dealt with a lot of pain. He let me kind of go in, or he would ask me to go one more time, go again. And after doing television for a year, I began to feel the muscles of courage, of choice, were beginning to atrophy. So when he said, "What else can you do?" I was really excited that he would ask me that, and at the same time terrified that I couldn't stretch. Like I felt the muscles really had been, and he made me go other places. And I don't know any director like him. He takes so many risks. And that, to me, is to be applauded.
You don't live with me. You live among the remains of dead people. You sift through the detritus. You read the terrain. You search for signs of passing, for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to. The rest is the mess you leave as you pass through. What I don't understand is why I can't cut loose of you.
He knows the color of the character's socks. And if they're not right,
he's pissed off because he's told somebody what they are. And but at the same time, he has 30, 40 guys, men and women, who've been with him since he jumped off. So there's a great loyalty towards him, even though he is a taskmaster, and he will not settle.
I roll with you, Neil, whatever.
Whatever. No, not on this one, Michael. On this one, you're on your own.
You figure this is the best thing to do? This is the best thing to do?
I got plans. I'm going away after, so for me, the reward is maybe worth the stretch. But Elaine takes good care of you. You got plenty put away. You got T-bonds, real estate. If I were you, I would be smart. I would cut loose of this.
Well, you know, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
Working with Al and Bob was quite extraordinary. It was the first time I'd worked with either man, and they're great actors. They don't come from a school of acting. That's the first misconception. I mean, Al comes from a school of acting. It's got one student, one teacher, and that's Al. It's the Al School of Acting. Bobby comes from the Bobby De Niro School of Acting. They are unique.
They have a scene together in this film, and they have a scene in the coffee shop that is placed into the center of this film. It's nice to see Al and Bobby, and it's nice to see Michael trying to give them the scene that's up to this historic film moment where they both have to be treated with respect and both have to come off well, And I love it. I love it like a movie fan. I say, okay, these are my two pals and these two great favorites. Let's see how they do. And they both were great, and the scene was written well, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun.
Guy told me one time, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you're on me and you got to move when I move, how do you expect to keep a marriage?
Oh, that's an interesting point. What are you, a monk?
I have a woman.
What do you tell her?
I tell her I'm a salesman.
So then if you spot me coming around that corner, you're just gonna walk out on this woman? Not say goodbye?
That's the discipline.
That's pretty vacant.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's that or we both better go do something else, pal.
I don't know how to do anything else.
Neither do I.
The issue of the television version of the film was that they cut the film down for TV, and I felt that it was so mutilated in the process that it absolutely was not the film that I made. And it wasn't even remotely the film that I made, and that anybody who was seeing that film was being cheated by this mutilated product. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't cut a film for television, that you don't allow for commercial breaks, that you don't do all kinds of things, which one can do, and you try and make it. We all live in this real world. It costs a lot of money to make these films, and any way to return that investment and profit on it is I'm all for. And one could be innovative. One could find ways to make it work. I made episodic television. It's in 4 quarters. It's actually quite an interesting form. And I would have been a proponent of actually extending the film and playing the film out over 2 nights, over a 4-hour time slot rather than, and that's what I did with The Insider, by the way.
Whose life, if you look at it under a microscope, doesn't have any flaws?
Well, that's the whole point, Jeffrey. That's the whole point. Anyone's, everyone's. They are going to look under every rock, dig up every flaw, every mistake you've ever made. They are going to distort and exaggerate everything you've ever done, man. Don't you understand?
What does this have to do with my testimony?
That's not
What
the
does it
point.
have to do with my testimony? I told the truth.
It's not about telling
true and prove
That's not the fucking point, whether you told the truth or not. Hello?
I told the truth.
Mann's 1999 release of The Insider recounted the chain of events that pitted an ordinary man against the tobacco industry and dragged two people into the fight of their lives. The film starred Al Pacino, Russell Crowe, Christopher Plummer, and Diane Venora. For his outstanding direction, Mann was nominated for Academy Awards as Best Director and Best Writer, along with co-author Eric Roth, and the film received a Best Picture nomination. Accolades and awards were also bestowed on Mann and the film by the Cognac Festival du Film Policier, Directors Guild of America, the Golden Globes, Golden Satellite Awards, National Board of Review, Online Film Critics Society Awards, and the Writers Guild of America.
I don't think any film was reviewed as well as The Insider. The critics just went ape. And the public, I think, still find it a bit talky. I was fascinated by the talk, and I think most people who are intelligent were fascinated by the talk, because the talk was journalese talk. It was beautifully done. It was, you don't often hear that language spoken like that, and it was absolute journalese, and I found totally riveting. I wasn't at all bored by it. And nothing could be more personal than Wygand's story. Nothing. I mean, somebody who sets his life on the line.
What I found particularly captivating about doing The Insider was the challenge of making a drama out of two real people in this situation of incredible stress. One has very courageous actions being taken by Jeffrey Wygand and Lowell Bergman. And they are courageous, and I judge people by their actions, not by an ad hominem, what I would consider to be an ad hominem fallacy of who they were when they were 14. I don't, I divorce the actions from the intent, from anything to do about whether or not he's nice to his pets. I could care less. I think you have to make a judgment on their actions. And by their actions, these are very courageous people. The second big attraction to The Insider was the possibility of whether or not I could bring audience edgewise into these characters, to place audience inside Jeffrey Wygand's shoes, walking through the destruction of his family, that kind of internal destruction, and almost like there's a hand grenade going off inside of him. It's kind of trauma from the inside out, given what he experiences.
Yeah, I want to talk to you.
Good, I want to talk to you. This is my house. In front of my wife, my kids.
I did not give you up to anyone.
What business do we have?
To straighten something out with you. Right here, right now.
You didn't mention my name. You haven't talked to anybody about me?
What am I going to mention
Why
your
Brown
name?
and Williamson? No, I spoke
How
to
the hell do I know about Brown
It
and
happened
Williamson?
just after I talked to you.
I don't know.
I
What
do not like coincidence.
Well, I don't like paranoid accusations. I'm a journalist. Think. Use your head. How do I operate as a journalist? By screwing the people who could provide me with information before they provided me with it.
You came all the way down here to tell me that?
No, I did not. Big tobacco is a big story, and you got something important to say, I can tell. But yes, I did. I came all the way down here to tell you. Story, no story. Fuck your story. I don't burn people.
I think that he sets up his subject in the most arresting way, probably in a more arresting way than most directors that I've seen work. And although he's a complex creature, and so he does not, as I said before, doesn't put a stamp on the film, his Michael Mann stamp, but he puts an energy onto each subject that is quite extraordinary and quite riveting and quite individual. That you might recognize. Not tricks, but the energy behind it.
Where the hell's the rest?
Nebraska football fans voiced their criticism.
You cut it.
Coming up in Bernard Goldberg's America.
You cut the guts out of what I said.
It was the time consideration,
Time?
Mike.
Bullshit. You corporate lackey. Who told you your incompetent little fingers had the requisite skills to edit me? I'm trying to band-aid a situation here, and you're too dim to...
Mike.
Mike? Mike! Try Mr. Wallace. We work in the same corporation doesn't mean we work in the same profession. Now, what are you going to do now? You're going to finesse me? Lawyer me some more? I've been in this profession 50 fucking years. You and the people you work for are destroying the most respected, the highest rated, the most profitable show on this network.
I decided I want to do the film fairly early on. I don't think about casting when we're writing. My partner, Eric Roth, my writing partner, Eric Roth, and I were writing it. We don't really think about character, but it became pretty apparent that I wanted Al to play Lowell Bergman for a whole bunch of reasons. One was that he'd never played a character like this ever before. In fact, Al has said something which makes total sense to me. It'll probably make no sense to anybody else, but he said the only other character he's played that was this original for him was in Dick Tracy. And he's never played a white-collar worker, an intellectual, someone who has overt politics, a man who is as confident and professionally as skilled in being an intellectual worker as Bergman. Bergman's a guy who is as confident talking to Sheikh Fadlallah in Baalbek, Lebanon, of the Hezbollah, as he is to a cop on the street in New Orleans because he's doing a segment on police corruption in the New Orleans PD.
You pay me to go get guys like Wygand, to draw him out, to get him to trust us, to get him to go on television. I do. I deliver him. He sits, he talks. He violates his own fucking confidentiality agreement. And he's only the key witness in the biggest public health reform issue, maybe the biggest, most expensive corporate malfeasance case in U.S. history. And Jeffrey Wygand, who's out on a limb, does he go on television and tell the truth? Yes. Is it newsworthy? Yes. Are we gonna air it? Of course not.
We could not discuss anything of substance with Wygand about what happened until literally a few weeks before we started principal photography, because he was still being litigated against by Brown and Williamson. There had been an agreed settlement, but until the ink was dry, we could not be in a position to ever receive any information from him while he was being sued for divulging information. So we couldn't be put in the position of being the recipients of anything. So we couldn't talk to him. So we had to kind of, extrapolate and project and character, and I think we did it.
History only remembers most what you did last. And should that be fronting a segment that allowed a tobacco giant to crash this network, does it give someone at my time of life pause? Yeah.
In 2001, Mann released Ali, a biography of sports legend Muhammad Ali, from his early days to his glory days in the fight ring. Will Smith played the title role with a strong supporting cast that included Jamie Foxx, Jon Voight, Mario Van Peebles, Ron Silver, Jeffrey Wright, McKelty Williamson, and Jada Pinkett Smith.
Cassius, in my
name ain't Cassius Clay. That is a slave name, and I am a free man. I am Muhammad Ali.
You know, I apologize. I apologize to you on the air. Your name is Muhammad Ali. You have a right to be called whatever you want. I apologize to you.
Listen, you ain't no champ. You a chump. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Ah! Rumble, young man, rumble. Y'all want to lose y'all money? Then you bet it on Sonny. He know I'm great. He will fall in 8.
I'm a fortunate man in that I found at an early age that thing to do with my life for which I have this unabating passion, making films. So it's just gotten better and better because it's pervaded every aspect of our life. I think it is the dominant form by which people take in story content. Content is encoded into story, and we have these things presented to us in the form of everything from episodic television to feature films and to significant films, and with a complete spectrum of from the ridiculous to the sublime, from the absolute trash to worthy stuff, and I think it's all to the good.
I think first and foremost probably is that that he recognizes a good story, and then he can tell a good story. Because I think ultimately that's what all good directors are. I think they're all good storytellers. You know, unfortunately, there are directors who recognize a good story but can't tell the story, or can tell the story but they don't tell it in a very good way. I think Michael has the ability to do both.
He will not stop until it's right, and until he has what he knows is right. He will never give up. You know, the sun can go down, he knows the sun will come up again tomorrow, and he will finish that shot. And if it makes a bunch of producers go berserk, that's their problem. But he's going to get his movie right. And that's a wonderful thing to feel as a group of people that are working for him, is that at the end of the day, it's going to be the way it's supposed to be.
It's really interesting with Michael. I think that he's very consumed with male things. And that's something that's very pervasive, you know, in this industry. But I think that he is genuinely besotted by it, that the idea that a man has to do what he has to do to feel right about his conscience, about his life, sort of obsessively driven. And I think that that's Michael.
If the films I'm going to make, or if the films I have made, one or two of them have some durability because they, in part, at a moment in time, somehow kind of synchronize with something going on in more lives than just mine and hit this kind of harmonic, and someone in the audience could look at it and say, I know what Jeffrey Wygant's feeling. I've been there in my life, and there's not about the dialogue. It's something in his eyes. I know that moment. I know that experience. And some of those get strung together, and it hits those harmonics of human experience. You know, that's what I relate to. That's what I would, you know, perhaps some people took that away with them, or that there was something authentic about, you know, the human condition. Some harmonic there, and that's what drama does. I mean, it's drama. And people say, why drama? His last film was based on real events. Well, it's because David Ray put this very well, and I'm going to paraphrase him. He said that we can learn things from drama about the human experience in a much more profound way because it's so dimensional. It's about our feelings. It's about all the multi-layered, multifaceted ways in which we are, than we ever can from a facts report or from news. And that's why you do drama. And that makes drama neither false, nor does it make drama superficial. It makes drama sometimes entertaining, but not necessarily entertainment. And that's, you know, that's this work.